All right, I'd like to call our ad hoc meeting together, call to order. And we will start with our roll call vote. We'll start on the left-hand side today.
John Ferrara.
Damon Jesperson.
Cindy Currier.
And we're missing one member due to illness. There's no one else present for our meeting, so we'll do updates. Why don't you start, John?
Update is that I've visited 2 centers and spoken with 3 directors and 2 board members of each. Lovely sessions, lovely input, and a certain commonality, a certain thread through all of the meetings. And location, starting off. And those locations described as safe, ground floor, elevator opportunity, because of disabled individuals, and ample parking. And one that they stressed was proximity to other town aspects, in other words. I noticed 2 of the locations, noted 2 of the locations, the VSO offices were concurrent, which is helpful because you've got somebody else in service to others to commiserate with, and proximity to library, as well as game rooms, ample game rooms. And, obviously the ideal would be the community center at Newburyport, which we don't have such a facility opportunity, where they're able to cobble in with the community center and participate, as is the VSO office in there as well. But more akin would be the location in Amesbury, which is a remarkable facility and a building location on Main Street, which is ample and beautifully set up to serve all manner of Council on Aging activities. And it's a terrific network, which Cindy is obviously patched into, and works in conjunction with NEAT. And basically, I think those are the 3 tenets. We've got to find a spot that is ample, safe, centrally located, and proximate to other activities of the town. Service activities of the town.
Yes, sounds good.
Primarily, those service activity would be such as librarian location in athletic fields, and the opportunity for indoor recreation, which Cindy's.
Yeah, gaming rooms and community center are, something like a community center may actually help when we get to the politics of this, as opposed to just a Council on Aging space, a community center space.
That's a positive feedback from Doreen for sure.
So
she spoke very highly of you and all that we're trying to encounter, and the board member is a strong social worker background, Alison Colsavari, who's I've been close to now for 4 years, because she was a keynote caregiver for Patty over all the years through her travail, and was gracious enough to give me a wonderful introduction to the director.
excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, for my part, I have kept up to date both Tracy and Alicia, so that the select board and the town itself know what we're doing, what we're looking at, making sure we stay on the right side of the law. And they're both encouraged. They also seem to see some value in the proximal nature of things, and so would like to set up a meeting with the fire chief, because they're going to have some space needs coming up, and see if it makes sense to look at these things together or independently. So that meeting will hopefully happen by March. My schedule is a little chaotic through February, so it may be hard for me to schedule. But that has been the gist of what I have worked on with this, and I will turn it back over to you now.
So what you had asked us to do was just review the charge. There wasn't really many changes
Okay.
to this. The only thing in here that kind of strikes me is the ability to function as emergency housing. I understand the ability to function as emergency heating or cooling space, like this past week, not this past week, but the weekend before, when we had that issue with Plum Island and whatnot.
Yeah.
I was in touch with the police chief, just making sure they had a location if they needed to evacuate people. Obviously, they're free to use that space, but
Yep.
they had the Newbury Elementary School as their space. But we could certainly be an option. But the emergency housing thing is just what makes me nervous, because I think people will maybe misunderstand that terminology.
Yep.
It's not a place to come and sleep over. But there are certain things that I had mentioned on our space needs, like having a washer and dryer in the space, because
Yes.
if someone's, yeah, it happens. Whether it's you just having it serviced for the day, or it's down for a week or whatever, or, you know, something happens. Things like that that we could be a resource for people for.
Sounds good. But one of the things that I think is going to be important going forward is starting to put some square footage to the space needs that you guys have developed. And then from that, we can develop rough costs, and we can get that to the capital planning committee, because the process of moving from a need to a building is extremely long and arduous. And I think the advantage to being proximal to another functioning space is there's the opportunities for shared spaces and shared uses, as well as shared utilities and things like that. So there are, hopefully, if the community comes together and can support the project, we can find ways to make it both more functional and more cost effective. But I think the first thing is to essentially break out the cost of every bell and whistle that we would want. In my history with the town, we have tried to do things the cheapest way possible, and we have suffered for it, because people then want it even cheaper. So my intention is to say, this is the gold standard. We'll start at the gold standard and see where we can end up, rather than starting at, this is barely acceptable, but we can make it work, and then having people chip away at it so that it becomes non-functional.
And as to the synergy aspect, you've got a very specific window, Monday through Thursday. How do you patch those 4 days in, plug in properly, not interfering, but participating as you indicated, in shared space? Shared, underutilized space, Monday through Thursday.
Yep.
That's a bunch of that stuff.
And I know the committee before us had discussed having space available for rent.
Yeah,
Um,
which
and
is,
that would open up Friday, Saturday, Sunday for that option.
yep.
So-
I remember writing a fresh letter saying what a wonderful place the Bink House would be should we raise it up on stilts 200 feet. But the idea being it would be the ideal community, and then think about Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the level of rental. You could book that solid 365 days a year and carve out your own Monday through Thursday. Because of corporate hideaways, meetings, the view, B&B, whatever you want to do. The element is that both locations, Amesbury and Newburyport, rental is a big part of their unused space. In fact, Newburyport lists a special director for sales and rental.
Right.
She has no responsibility other than to book stuff when it's not being scheduled or used. She has a responsibility to sell it, and apparently they do it well.
Did you get any sense of what portion of costs that rental actually covers?
I did not.
Okay.
I didn't. That's where Kevin's going to get me to the director to ask those harder questions. And he and I go back 40 years.
That would be very interesting to find out, because I think that, you know, in selling things to the town, or the voters, you know, seeing what other towns are making for an income on a space
Mhm.
could be really useful.
Well, think about what we must make for the fields on Central Street. Do we know the revenue from that from your time on the board?
I did back then, but it's been years now, so
Okay.
it's not,
All right.
you know, but it covered the maintenance costs. So,
That's what I think it is now, what's coming in.
Swap,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I think they actually set it up so that it was revenue neutral
Okay.
rather than revenue generated.
right.
They had talked with the basketball courts about making those revenue positive, but that was after I left the board, so I don't know where that is currently.
Before you had that painted, I went down to witness the in-place temporary
Yep.
pickleball, and those basketball courts were loaded with 20-year-olds. And obviously, they've got to be townies.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody's going to drive 20 miles to play basketball. So they had to be local village kids on leave or out of school or what have you. Is that open to the public? So it's,
So essentially, the fields are open unless they have been
Booked,
used.
yeah.
So they can be, you know, if you wanted to host a tournament,
Yep.
you could rent the space, and it's essentially a first come, first serve, and there's a preferential use, so that if you're a local and two people get their application in at the same time, a local and a non-local, the local gets it, you know,
Okay.
but there's a whole system for evaluating, and, you know, you have to have proof of insurance and all of these
Those documents,
elements.
we went through that in the Upper Green in the late 1970s in front of Angie Machero's building that ball field.
Mm.
That was just grass pasture. I was there with a gentleman from Raleigh by the name of Rick McDonald, who we tragically lost last week. And basically, one or two other fellows, I think young Noyes, when he was still in school, before he went to work for his dad, and Machero's granted us the opportunity. We managed to find enough volunteers to build that field.
Hmm.
And then we maintained it ourselves with garden tools. And now I think there's some pro bono aspect to it now. Some landscaper
Mhm.
comes in there at the beginning of the season, gets it ready, and then it's up to the players to
Maintain.
maintain it.
Sounds good. So it sounds like you still have a few more people to talk to.
One stop and possibility, if it makes sense, to get Steve to introduce me to the Council on Aging Director down in Ipswich. But I think Rowley and Amesbury and Newburyport are pretty much the standard that
Yes.
meets with us. They're all blessed with buildings that I think they had to pay for once and young, but not recently.
Mm-hmm.
And if I understand it correctly, Raleigh's moved into the old schoolhouse, and Amesbury, by happenstance and good fortune, ran into a contractor's stumbling block and he graciously, for whatever reason, anointed the building, sold it for $1 to the town of Amesbury.
Probably a tax write-off, but
Probably, yeah, and,
whatever the reason,
they-
everyone benefits. So,
spectacular.
um,
Though I drove by it, because it's
Tucked
sitting
in the back.
tucked way out back, and they need a bigger sign.
mm.
Or cut down a couple of bushes that are covering it. It's simple as
As a
that.
hidden.
Yeah, it's a little intimidating because there's been a lot of traffic coming out of the gas station on the right, so,
And the DPW building is there.
and the DPW building sits there and you never know that it's just coming, you gotta curl in to see the Costello building. Yeah, and the Costello sign is no bigger than, and the letter's no bigger than your bottle.
Would we like to establish our next meeting to again follow the Council on Aging, or
Yeah, that would be good. I'm
Okay.
away for about a week and a half in California from February 1 to February 11th. Gonna go meet Anthony Joseph Travato, my grandson.
Fantastic. I'm at the beginning of the month and the middle of the month, I'm traveling for both of those, so
Okay,
the end of the month makes sense for me.
Okay, so then, obviously there will be a van ride like we did this time.
Mhm.
So do we want to bump it closer instead of having such a gap?
Yes.
how was the van ride?
Good.
Where'd you guys go?
Just
Up
up
and down the
95,
highway.
turn around and see.
I had a call that I could not ignore.
Do we want to do 9:45?
Sounds good.
All right, so since we only have two of us, why don't you move that that's when we have our meeting, and you can second it, and then we'll approve it and close our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.